Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5361 theory and management of public service organizations. These are the readings from the required text. Managing Human Behavior in Public and Nonprofit Organizations, Chapter 1.
That is quite the mouthful to start us off. But I promise, what lies beneath that academic title is actually, it's fascinating stuff. It's essentially the source code for how the world actually works.
I know. I can hear the listeners right now. They're seeing the words public service organizations and, theory on their podcast feed, and their thumbs are hovering over the skip button.
Right.
It sounds like eat your vegetables content. But hold on. Do not touch that dial, because we are about to wade through what looks like a dense textbook, but we are going to make it painless. Actually, I'll go out on a limb here. We're going to make it interesting.
I completely agree. The goal here isn't just to read a textbook or memorize definitions for a midterm. The mission of this deep dive is to understand the human machinery behind the organizations that essentially keep civilization running. We are looking at how to influence behavior to make society better. That's the so what here. It's all about impact.
Right. And let's be clear about who we are talking about. When we say public service, we aren't just talking about the person stamping forms behind the counter at the DMV.
Although they're important.
Though they are important.
Right.
We're talking about police chiefs, policy analysts, school superintendents, nonprofit managers, hospital administrators, the people doing the real heavy lifting in our communities.
Exactly. And the stakes for these people are incredibly high. The source text makes a really compelling point right off the bat. These aren't just managers trying to sell more widgets or boost the stock price by 0.25% to please shareholders.
No.
These are people charged with fostering citizenship, making cities safer, educating youth, healing the sick, and protecting the vulnerable.
And this is the kicker. They are doing it while people are often yelling at them.
Well, yes, that is the challenge the book highlights immediately. These professionals are often tackling what the authors call unreachable goals with limited resources and, as you noted, an often hostile public.
That's the part that really grabbed me in the introduction. It's like the job description from hell. Here, fix homelessness. Here is $5. Oh, and by the way, everyone is mad at you, and the newspapers are waiting for you to fail.
Yeah.
Who signs up for that?
People who care about the mission. But caring isn't enough. It creates a pressure cooker environment. And that is why this deep dive into organizational behavior, or OB, it isn't just academic fluff.
Right.
If you are in the private sector, maybe you can get away with just being good at finance or marketing, but knowledge of organizational behavior is essentially a survival toolkit for the public sector.
A survival toolkit. I like that framing.
It really is. If you are a public servant, understanding why people behave the way they do, your staff, your bosses, the public, that's the only way you survive the job without burning out. You have to understand the software running inside people's heads.
So let's unpack this survival toolkit. The chapter starts with a scenario that I think perfectly sets the stage. It's a bit of a nightmare scenario, honestly, but if you've worked in government or nonprofits, it's going to feel uncomfortably familiar.
It is a very realistic scenario. It captures the chaos perfectly.
Okay, so picture this. You, the listener, yes, you've just been appointed as the head of a state child support division. Congratulations. Maybe not. Because the previous boss didn't just retire. They left in a massive scandal.
Oh, great.
A legislative study just came out showing your division has a terrible track record of actually collecting payments. So the math is bad and the optics are worse.
And it gets worse.
It does. The citizens are furious. They're calling the office, screaming that they get treated rudely. A TV news magazine just did an expose comparing you to private collection companies that are way more efficient.
Yeah.
And your staff, they are just disheartened.
Beaten down.
Absenteeism is through the roof. People are calling in sick just to avoid coming into the building. It's a ghost town of morale.
But, and this is the twist in the scenario that makes it so interesting, when you actually sit down and talk to the workers, you find out they aren't villains. They aren't lazy.
No.
They are bright, committed, hardworking people who feel unfairly criticized and drastically under-resourced. They want to do a good job, but they feel like they're drowning.
So you're the new boss. You walk into this mess on Monday morning. The coffee is cold, the phones are ringing, and the staff looks terrified. The question the book asks is, what do you do first?
It's a paralyzing question for a lot of new managers. The instinct is to do something big and immediate, to show you're in charge. Do you fire everyone and start fresh?
Right.
Do you go to the legislature and beg for more money? Do you go on a PR blitz to change the narrative?
My instinct would probably be to hide under the desk and update my LinkedIn profile. But assuming that's not an option and we actually have to fix this, how does the text suggest we tackle a problem this complex? Because it feels like everything is broken at once.
This brings us to the core concept of the chapter and really the foundation of the whole book, the lenses of analysis.
Lenses, okay.
The authors argue that how you solve this problem depends entirely on which lens you are looking through. You can't just look at the problem as a big, messy blob of failure. You have to break it down into levels to see the mechanics.
Okay, let's walk through these lenses, because I think
Yeah.
this is really helpful for anyone managing anything, frankly, whether it's a government agency or a chaotic family dinner. What is lens number one?
Lens number one is the individual. If you look through this lens, you are focusing on the specific people, Sarah, Mike, David. You're looking at their psychology.
Okay.
You might look at that child support division and say, the problem is employee motivation, or maybe it's burnout,
Mm.
or maybe the employees literally don't understand the mission because nobody explained it to them.
So if that's your diagnosis, if you're wearing the individual glasses, what's the cure? What do you do?
The action would be very personal and direct. You'd talk to people one-on-one. You'd try to understand their specific needs and desires. You might set individual goals or check if supervisors are supporting their development. You're fixing the machine one part at a time.
I see.
You're asking, what does Sarah need to do her job better? Is she trained? Is she motivated?
Okay, but what if Sarah's fine? What if the individuals are all great, talented people, but they just hate working together? I've been on teams like that, all-stars who can't pass the ball.
That takes us to lens number two, the group. Here, you aren't looking at the individual actors. You're looking at the cast as a whole. You're looking at the team dynamic.
The culture.
Exactly. Is there alienation? Is the team culture toxic? Maybe the work groups are configured wrong, so people are stepping on each other's toes or, hoarding information.
Right, so the action there isn't talk to Sarah, it's fix the team meeting.
Exactly. Or reconfigure the work teams entirely. Maybe you form task forces to solve specific problems, so they learn to trust each other again. The goal is to fix the social glue that holds the work together. You're addressing the we, not the I.
Okay, so we have the individual and the group. But sometimes you can have great people and great teams, and they still fail because the rules of the game are broken. Is that where the next lens comes in?
Precisely. Lens number three is the organization. This is the structural stuff. You zoom out to the blueprint of the agency. Is the division actually structured to succeed? Do they have a strategic plan? Are the performance measurement systems making any sense?
This is where you look at the tools and the bureaucracy, right? Like, do they actually have the computers they need, or are they trying to process complex data on a calculator from 1980?
Exactly. Supplies, technology, hiring guidelines. Maybe the problem isn't that the people are lazy individual or that they hate each other group, but that the hiring guidelines organization are bringing in people with the wrong skills for the job.
Or the software is just ancient.
Right. Or the software is from 1995 and crashes every time they try to input a payment. You can motivate someone all day long, but if their computer doesn't work, they can't do the job. That's an organizational failure.
Which brings us to the biggest picture of all, lens number 4.
The system or the environment. This is looking outside the building. In our child support scenario, maybe the unit isn't getting funding from the legislature. Maybe there's a hostile public attitude toward government workers in general, which makes the job miserable.
So it's external factors.
Exactly. Maybe the laws you are enforcing are actually poorly written, making it legally impossible to collect those payments.
So the solution there isn't about fixing the software or cheering up the team, it's politics.
In a way.
Yeah.
It's lobbying, it's improving public relations, it's working with key legislators, it's managing the external environment so the internal team can actually do their job. It's creating a shield around your team so they can work.
Yeah.
If the legislature cuts your budget by 50%, no amount of team building is going to fix that.
So the takeaway here isn't that you pick one lens and ignore the others, is it? It feels like that would be dangerous.
No. And that's the trap bad managers fall into. They only have one lens. If you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Right.
If you're a psychologist, every problem looks like an individual motivation issue. If you're a structural engineer, every problem looks like a bad workflow chart. The text argues that organizational behavior OB is the study of the human dimension across all these levels.
It's the interaction between them.
Yes. You have to understand how the system affects the organization, which affects the group, which affects the individual.
It's like a Russian nesting doll of dysfunction.
Or opportunity.
Huh.
If you can align all those levels, if the system supports the organization, which supports the group, which supports the individual, that's when magic happens. That's when high performance becomes possible.
Okay, so that's the general management stuff. And honestly, that sounds applicable to Google or Ford just as much as the DMV. But the text makes a really big deal about this being specifically for public and nonprofit organizations. I have to ask, is there really a difference? I mean, management is management, right? Whether you're selling sneakers or collecting child support.
You would think so,
Yeah.
and for a long time, business schools taught it that way, but the authors are very firm on this. There was a critical distinction. They actually introduce what you might call a fifth lens, or an overarching framework that changes everything.
Which is?
Governance in the public interest.
Okay, that sounds noble, but what does it mean practically? Does it just mean we have to be nicer?
It's about the bottom line. In
Yeah.
the private sector, the ultimate values are usually efficiency and profit.
Mm-hmm.
If you are efficient and you make money, you win. The market rewards you.
Sure.
In the public sector, the goal is different. It's about democratic values. It's not just about winning or being the most efficient. It's about justice, fairness, and serving the community.
The text mentions the difference between a citizen and a customer. I thought that was a really interesting nuance because in business, we're obsessed with the customer.
It is vital. In business, we talk about customer service. The customer is always right. The customer buys the product. If the customer wants a burger without pickles, you give them a burger without pickles.
Right.
But in public service, we serve citizens. And the book clarifies they don't mean citizen in the legal sense of holding a passport. They mean individuals engaged in a democracy.
Right. We serve them. We don't just sell to them.
Exactly. And here's the hard part. Sometimes serving a citizen means saying no to them, or regulating them, or collecting taxes from them, or arresting them, because it's in the public interest. You can't manage that relationship the same way you manage a transaction at a fast food counter. You can't just maximize efficiency if it compromises fairness.
That's a great point. If the police force was purely efficient, they might just arrest everyone to clear the streets. Or if the child support division was purely efficient, they might harass people in ways that are unethical. So the public interest lens acts as a check on pure efficiency.
Precisely. Managers in this sector must care about democratic values. They have to balance efficiency with equity. You have to treat people equally, even if it takes longer. That's a constraint private businesses don't always have.
So it requires a different set of skills because it sounds like the job is harder. You have to be a manager and a diplomat and a philosopher.
It does. The text references a classic study by the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, the OPM. They looked at what actually makes a manager effective in government. They wanted to know what separated the stars from the average managers.
And what did they find?
They divided competencies into two buckets, the what and the how. The what is technical competence, knowing the regulations, the budget codes, the program details.
The stuff you get tested on during the interview? Do you know the specific penal code for this violation?
Right. But the how, that was the game changer. The how included things like broad perspective, environmental sensitivity, leadership, interpersonal sensitivity, communication.
Which, if I'm reading this right, is basically just a fancy list of organizational behavior skills.
Precisely. The text points out that almost all the how skills, the things that distinguish the top managers from the mediocre ones, are actually OB skills in disguise.
I see.
You can be a technical genius at child support law. You can be a walking encyclopedia of regulations. But if you lack interpersonal sensitivity and leadership, you will fail in that scenario we discussed earlier. You won't be able to turn that team around.
That's a perfect segue, actually, because we weren't always this enlightened about interpersonal sensitivity, were we? The history of how we treat workers is, well, it's a little dark. We didn't always care about their feelings or their environmental sensitivity.
Dark is a polite way to put it. If we go back to the early 20th century, we entered the era of scientific management, led by a man named Frederick Taylor.
Frederick Taylor, the father of scientific management. He sounds like he should be a hero of industry, but in this text, he comes off a bit cold.
Yes. In 1911, he published work that basically defined how work was done for decades. And his philosophy was simple. People are machines, or rather, unreliable parts of a machine that need to be calibrated.
The text mentions his view on human nature. He didn't think highly of workers, did he?
No. He believed workers were naturally lazy. He called it soldiering. He believed that if you left a worker alone, they would inevitably do as little as possible to not get fired. And frankly, he thought they were stupid.
Wow.
His goal was to strip away any decision-making from the worker. The manager does the thinking. The worker does the doing.
There's a quote in the source material that actually made my jaw drop. He was talking about hauling pig iron, big, heavy blocks of metal, and he described the ideal worker for this job.
I know the one. He said it is possible to train an intelligent gorilla to do the job.
An intelligent gorilla.
That sums up the mindset. You don't need a human with feelings, aspirations, and ideas. You need a biological machine that can lift heavy things and follow instructions. He literally wanted to remove the brain from the equation.
And the motivation was purely financial, right? He didn't think workers cared about mission or teamwork.
Purely. It was the piece rate system. I pay you a specific amount for every hunk of iron you move. If you move more, you get more. If you move less, you starve. End of story. Taylor assumed that money was the only lever you needed to pull to get a human to work.
He thought humans were simple economic units.
Yes. He also used a baseball analogy that I found interesting, given that baseball players today definitely have opinions.
They do.
Yes. He said, a worker should be like a baseball player who obeys the coach instantly. No questions asked. If the coach signals bunt. You don't ask why. You don't suggest swinging away because you see a gap in the outfield. You just obey.
Total submission.
It's about total submission to the one best way determined by the manager.
It's so rigid, it strips all the agency away. But then something happened to change this. The text talks about the Hawthorne studies. This feels like the plot twist in our movie where the scientists realize the monster has feelings.
It really was a plot twist. This was the late 1920s at the Western Electric Hawthorne Works plant near Chicago. It started as a very Taylor-esque experiment. Researchers wanted to see if the physical environment, specifically lighting, affected productivity.
Makes sense. Taylor would love that. Brighter lights, better visibility, faster work. It's logical.
That was the hypothesis.
Yeah.
So they made the lights brighter for a group of workers. And guess what? Productivity went up.
Success. The science works. Case closed.
But then, just to be thorough, they dimmed the lights. They made it so dark the workers could barely see what they were doing. It was like working in twilight.
And logically, productivity should crash.
That's what they thought. But no. Productivity went up again.
Wait, what? It went up when it was bright, and it went up when it was pitch black?
Exactly. It went up when the lights were bright. It went up when the lights were dim. It went up no matter what they did to the physical environment.
So the researchers are scratching their heads. Their entire worldview, that physical inputs equal physical outputs, is broken. What was going on?
It took them years to figure it out, but they realized it wasn't the lights. It was the attention. The workers were being observed. Researchers were asking them questions. Managers were checking in on them.
Someone cared.
Someone cared about what they were doing. They felt special. They felt like a team.
The Hawthorne effect.
Exactly. People change their behavior simply because they are being observed and because someone is paying attention to them.
That seems so obvious now, but back then that must have been revolutionary.
It shattered Taylor's intelligent gorilla model. You can't flatter a gorilla into working harder, but you can a human. The researchers concluded, and I love this line, a human problem requires a human solution. Relationships matter more than physical conditions.
And this kicked off what the book calls the humanistic evolution.
Yes. We move from thinking of people as machines to thinking of them as, people. We got thinkers like Douglas McGregor, who gave us Theory X and Theory Y.
I always get these mixed up. Break them down for me.
It's actually a way to categorize managers and their assumptions about people. Theory X is the old view, the Taylor view. A Theory X manager assumes people hate work, they want to avoid responsibility, and they need to be commanded, controlled, and threatened.
So the micromanaging boss who tracks your keystrokes is a Theory X boss.
100%.
Oh.
They operate on fear. And then there's Theory Y. This is the new view. It assumes work is natural, like play or rest. People have inherent worth. They have the capacity for self-direction and creativity if you just give them the chance and the resources.
It's amazing how much that shift in mindset changes how you manage. If you believe Theory X, you're a tyrant because you think you have to be. If you believe Theory Y, you're a coach.
Precisely. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you treat people like children, Theory X, they act like children. They wait for orders. If you treat them like partners, Theory Y, they step up. The text also nods to other giants here. Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, reminding us that once you pay someone enough to eat, safety needs, they start wanting things like belonging and self-esteem.
Right. Money isn't everything. Taylor was wrong about the paycheck being the only lever.
Correct. And Chester Barnard, who talked about cooperation as the basis of organizations, and Kurt Lewin, who showed that if you let people participate in decisions, they buy into them.
So we went from do what I say because I pay you to let's work together because we have a shared purpose.
That's the trajectory of the 20th century in a nutshell.
But we aren't stopping in the 20th century. We need to get current. Section 4 of our outline brings us to the modern toolkit. We're talking about the 90s and right now. What's the cutting edge of organizational behavior?
Two main areas really stand out in the text: positive psychology and neuroscience.
Let's start with positive psychology. Is this just think happy thoughts? Because that sounds a bit soft for a government agency facing a budget crisis.
It's not about toxic positivity or ignoring problems. It's a rigorous scientific shift. It started with a guy named Martin Seligman in the late 90s. He looked at the field of psychology and realized it was almost entirely focused on pathology. What is wrong with people? Illness, depression, neurosis.
The deficit model, fixing the broken parts.
Right. Seligman flipped it. He asked, what about what's right with people? He called it positive organizational scholarship, or POS. It focuses on resilience, optimism, vitality.
The text mentions an abundance model versus a deficit model.
Yes, the deficit model is about solving problems, overcoming resistance, competing. It's looking for the cracks in the wall. The abundance model is about appreciation, collaboration, virtuousness. It's looking for the strong bricks to build upon.
Virtuousness. You don't hear that word in business meetings often.
You don't, but the research suggests you should. The text actually quotes an old Johnny Mercer song. Accentuate the positive. It's about building on strengths.
That reminds me of the Gallup approach. I've done that Strengths Finder test. The idea is, instead of spending all your time trying to fix the fact that I'm bad at spreadsheets, let's focus on the fact that I'm good at talking to people.
Exactly. Why spend energy making a weakness mediocre when you could spend that energy making a strength exceptional? That's the heart of the modern approach. It's about unlocking potential rather than just mitigating failure.
Yeah.
If you have a team member who is great at analysis but shy, don't force them to be a public speaker. Let them analyze.
Okay, so that's the psychology. What about the biology? The text gets into neuroscience. This feels like science fiction compared to Frederick Taylor.
This is where it gets really interesting. For a long time, we thought of the brain as a computer. Input, processing, output, logic.
Yeah.
We thought that to be professional meant to be rational and suppress emotion.
Leave your feelings at the door. That's the classic advice.
Right. But new research, referenced by authors like David Brooks in The Social Animal and Daniel Goleman, shows that the brain is fundamentally emotional. We like to think we are rational, but the unconscious emotional parts of our brain are driving the bus most of the time.
So treating employees like rational robots who only respond to logic is biologically incorrect.
It is scientifically flawed. You cannot manage people using only logic. You have to engage the social and emotional brain. The text mentions that the brain is plastic. It can learn at any age, but it learns through connection and emotion.
It's funny, we started with Taylor saying, check your emotions at the door, you're a machine. And now science is saying you can't check your emotions at the door because that's literally how your brain works.
We've come full circle to realizing that the soft stuff, emotions, relationships, trust, is actually the hard stuff of biology.
Right.
If a manager stresses you out, your brain physically shuts down its higher processing centers.
Really?
You literally become stupider when you are afraid. Taylorism actually makes people less capable.
That is wild. Fear makes you stupid. I think we've all felt that in a meeting where we were afraid to speak up.
Absolutely. The amygdala hijacks the brain, and the creative, problem-solving prefrontal cortex goes offline. So if you want a smart team, you need a safe team.
Okay, I can hear the skeptics again. The cynical listener is driving their car right now thinking, this sounds nice. Abundance, virtuousness, emotional brains. But I have a budget to balance and a quota to meet. Does this actually work? Does good management actually change the bottom line?
That is the so what question. And the text provides some very hard data to answer it. Because you're right, if this doesn't improve performance, it's just poetry. We need proof.
Hit me with the numbers.
First, there's Gallup research. They found that engaged employees double their odds of success compared to disengaged ones, and engagement drives productivity, quality, and customer service. It lowers safety incidents. It lowers theft.
Okay, but engagement feels vague. What about the boss specifically? Does the individual manager matter?
There was a fascinating study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER. They looked at about 24,000 workers, big sample size.
Okay.
They found that if you take a poorly performing boss and replace them with a top-performing boss, The boost in productivity is significant.
How significant?
It is equal to adding an extra person to the team.
Whoa. So a good boss is literally worth a whole extra employee in terms of output.
Yes.
And-
Think about that. You don't need more budget for more staff. You just need a better manager. The top manager is like a star athlete who makes everyone else on the field play better.
Wow.
They unlock that discretionary effort. They clear the obstacles.
That's a powerful argument for investing in leadership training. We usually cut training first when the budget gets tight.
Which is exactly the wrong move.
Yeah.
You are cutting the one lever that could multiply your workforce without hiring anyone.
And then there is the retention issue. We've all heard the saying, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses.
Is that actually true, or is it just something we say on LinkedIn?
That's what I'm asking you.
It's statistically true. One study cited in the text asked employees what factor most negatively impacted their productivity.
Let me guess. Low pay.
You'd think so. But no. 58% cited poor management. That was the #1 factor. It was 20 points higher than lack of motivation.
So bad management is actually the biggest drag on productivity. It's not that workers are lazy, it's that their bosses are getting in the way.
Precisely. If you are a public service leader and you are wondering why you can't hit your goals, the first place to look isn't the budget or the legislation. It's the mirror.
And that brings us to the end of our first deep dive into this text. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. We've looked at the 4 lenses: individual, group, organization, system, and how they layer on top of each other.
Right.
We've talked about the unique responsibility of public service serving citizens, not just customers.
We trudged through the battle days of intelligent guerrillas with Frederick Taylor and saw the light literally at Hawthorne, realizing that attention matters more than architecture.
And we looked at the modern toolkit of positive psychology and neuroscience, proving that treating people well isn't just nice, it's biologically necessary for high performance.
The recurring theme here seems to be learning by doing. The text emphasizes that you can't just read about this, you have to practice it. It's a contact sport.
That's right. And the most important practice starts with yourself. The text makes a profound point near the end. To manage others, we must start by managing ourselves. We have to know our own style, our own strengths, and our own triggers.
It's the put your own oxygen mask on first rule of management.
In a way, yes. If you don't understand why you react the way you do, if you don't know why you get angry when an employee questions you, or why you shy away from conflict, you have no hope of understanding why your staff reacts the way they do. Self-awareness is the prerequisite for social awareness.
So here is the final provocative thought I want to leave our listeners with today. We talked about how we moved from treating workers like gorillas to treating them like social animals. We know now that the #1 factor in productivity is the manager you.
The data is clear.
So if you are a manager or you want to be one, ask yourself this hard question. Are you the reason your team is thriving, or are you the reason they are quitting?
That is a tough question to look in the eye.
It is, but that's what this study group is for, to help us be the reason they thrive.
Well said.
All right, class dismissed for today. Go digest that. See you for chapter 2.